I spoke with President Trump on Saturday, and we both acknowledged the complications during the interview posed by the rain.
Yeah, but you were inside. There was no challenge to the rain. No.
Jon Stewart is absolutely roasting NBC's Kristen Welker over her interview style, and it's pure gold. Look, anyone being honest knows the media had Trump in their crosshairs the moment he stepped into politics. But the bias has grown so blatant, so embarrassingly obvious, that even card-carrying liberals are now turning on their own journalists and calling them out.
But this is where Kristen Welker nearly undoes all of the good work she did, with one of the worst pleas in the history of journalism.
Mr. President, let's please, I traveled all the way to Wisconsin.
So, if you've got a taste for scorching political commentary that pulls zero punches, smash that subscribe button because we're just getting started.
It was ABC and CBS and CNN. Your one-sided crooked networks. Right, let's call it quits because I've had it. Thank you, darling. Have a good time.
Donald Trump is absolutely right to call out the shameless double standards rotting through these media outlets. Let's not pretend we didn't see it. The same journalists who lobbed marshmallow soft softballs at Joe Biden, tiptoeing around his cognitive decline like it was a state secret, turned into rabid attack dogs the moment Trump walked into the room. The same networks that handed Kamala Harris puff piece interviews with all the edge of a kindergarten quiz suddenly found their investigative spine, but only when there was a Republican to grill. And Obama? He was practically gift-wrapped in a hero's narrative for 8 straight years, with the press corps acting less like journalists and more like his personal PR team. But the moment Donald Trump took the stage, the tone shifted. The gloves came off, and the mask finally slipped. America noticed, and frankly, they're done pretending otherwise.
With one of the worst pleas in the history of journalism.
Mr. President, let's please, I traveled all the way to Wisconsin.
You can't leave, sir. I was in business class.
Jon Stewart is hilariously trolling his own side for asking questions so embarrassingly soft that they'd make even Trump crack a smile. And honestly, it's the most self-aware moment legacy media has accidentally stumbled into in years. This is precisely why Republicans have torched their trust in mainstream outlets and never looked back. The numbers don't lie. Viewership is cratering, credibility is bleeding out, and the bias isn't a whisper anymore, it's a foghorn. Surprised? Not even remotely. Did anyone expect better from the same outlets that spent years perfecting the art of selective outrage? Absolutely not. Their playbook is transparent and tired: hammer Trump at every turn, soften every blow aimed at the left, and quietly lay the groundwork to crown the next Democratic darling when the moment arrives. America sees it, Stewart apparently sees it, and legacy media is the only one still pretending otherwise.
Maybe finally this moment will give journalists permission to not back down.
Spoke with President Trump on Saturday, and we both acknowledged the complications during the interview posed by the rain.
Yeah, but you were inside. There was no challenge to the rain. No.
And that excuse? Absolutely pathetic, and Jon Stewart wasn't about to let it slide. Let's put this in perspective. Donald Trump has sat down for interviews in loud, chaotic environments, outdoor rallies, windy tarmacs, and cramped backrooms where the audio was barely holding together with duct tape and a prayer. Yet, somehow, the conversation still got done. But Kristen Welker wants America to swallow the idea that a little rainfall outside a perfectly solid building derailed her entire interview. Come on, nobody's buying it. The real story Stewart is exposing is far more telling. Welker wasn't shutting things down just because of the weather. Critics argue she looked rattled the moment Trump pushed back on her line of questioning. When Trump had finally had enough of her recycled, agenda-driven questions, she folded. The rain may have ended that interview, but for critics, her credibility took the bigger hit. Here's Victor Davis Hanson breaking down what happened in the interview.
There's 2 things going on there. One is Trump's instinct. So Trump was a veteran of the 2020 election. He was the primary loser in that, literally and primarily. And he lost Arizona and Georgia and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan by about 55,000 votes. Some of them those states were 10,000 votes. And everybody remembers that evening, about 9 o'clock Pacific with Donald Trump ahead in all of those, and then going to bed thinking he won, and he lost.
Victor Davis Hanson is setting the record straight, and he's not mincing words. But here's where the story takes its sharpest turn. The Biden administration waltzed into office and almost immediately began unraveling. The economy buckled under reckless spending. Inflation gnawed at every American household. The southern border dissolved into controlled chaos, and national security took a back seat to political posturing. Americans didn't just grow frustrated, they grew exhausted. For years of broken promises, rising costs, and embarrassing leadership left the country desperately craving something different, something bold. They wanted a breath of fresh air, and they chose Trump.
You people in California mail out ballots to people who just come in contact with state offices. And here is what is worse about you. If somebody signs his name and it's incorrect, you say if it's correct, if it's 40% correct. At least they do in Los Angeles. So if I say my name is Victor Davis Hanson and then somebody writes Victor Day, D-A, that's good enough. And worse yet, here we are in 2026. It's not 1870 on the frontier and people make a mark. Think about that.
Victor Davis Hanson is peeling back the curtain on California, and what he's revealing is nothing short of stunning. According to Hanson, the alleged rot running through the state's political machinery wasn't accidental, it was architectural.
Can't write your name, but you can be an informed voter. So how do you read the ballot pamphlet information that's mailed? Well, you don't. And so under our protocols, you can just make a mark, and then anybody can sign their name as a witness. Anybody. And that person can sign that name again and again. So you could take a lot of ballots that were mailed and just put X, Y, Z, curly Q, excellent, whatever your mark is, and then one person could just say, Victor Hanson, witness with me. And that's legitimate. And they don't ever check that.
If what Victor Davis Hanson is laying out is even halfway accurate, then Trump's frustration during that interview wasn't a tantrum. It was a completely justified response to a loaded, disingenuous line of questioning. Think about it. Kristen Welker sits across from Trump and reduces all of it to the tired, recycled question of whether he is evidence that the 2020 election was stolen. That's not journalism, that's a trap dressed in a blazer. Trump had laid out his position countless times before, and Welker knew it. He'd simply had enough, and honestly, given the full context Hanson is presenting, who could blame him? Now, take a look at this moment during the interview before Trump walked out.
That's how they vote in
crooked,
California.
just like you're crooked. Your press is crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked.
To be fair, I'm not crooked, but let's
Well, you
continue.
play right into their hands.
Let's continue.
You're either crooked or you're stupid. You're one-sided crooked networks. Right, let's call it quits. I've had it. Thank you, darling. Have a good day.
More journalists are slowly, painfully waking up to a reality that Trump supporters grasped years ago. This man does not play by anyone else's rulebook, and that's precisely what makes him a force legacy media simply cannot neutralize. They walk into every interview armed with carefully engineered gotcha questions, traps disguised as journalism, fully expecting Trump to stumble into the neat little narrative they've already written. But Trump doesn't read from their script. He pivots. He redirects. He reframes, leaving journalists visibly flustered and clutching questions that suddenly have no target. The carefully laid trap snaps shut on nothing, and that unpredictability isn't a flaw. It's arguably his greatest political weapon. It keeps opponents off balance, dominates news cycles on his own terms, and consistently forces the media to react to him rather than the other way around.
And and so what Trump was saying is your whole system is corrupt, and it's always corrupt in one direction. In other words, the people who make a mark and the witnesses vote left wing, and the people who mail out all the ballots are left wing, and the people who harvest the ballots, for the most part, are left wing. And our voters tend to either send in mail ballots very early because they're very conscientious, or they show up in person.
Victor Davis Hanson is making a point that cuts straight to the bone. Trump had every right to call out Kristen Welker and her media colleagues. And here's why. These are journalists who allegedly understand better than anyone that systemic advantages inside the election process appear to lean leftward. Critics say journalists see it, know it, and choose silence. But the moment Trump opens his mouth and says what critics believe they have avoided admitting, the knives come out. He gets labeled, mocked, and dismissed as a conspiracy theorist. The hypocrisy is breathtaking. Yet here's what separates Trump from every polished, focus group politician the system keeps producing. He doesn't sanitize his feelings for public consumption, and he doesn't perform emotions he doesn't have. What you see is what you get, unfiltered and unapologetic.
Unions to go out and canvass neighborhoods and ask them, do you have a ballot in your home? If you do, we can witness it. And that is the best interpretation. The worst interpretation is, give me your ballot that you got, and we will witness and put a mark on it. It seems absurd, but it's true.
So here's the bottom line. Everything we've unpacked today tells one cohesive, undeniable story. A media establishment so deeply compromised by bias that even Jon Stewart can't defend it anymore. And yet, despite every trap, every indictment, every gotcha question, and every coordinated pile-on, Donald Trump is still standing, still fighting, and still drawing crowds that leave journalists scrambling for explanations. Trump, unfiltered and unapologetic, remains the only figure in modern politics willing to name it out loud. Legacy media can keep crafting their traps and polishing their narratives. America has already changed the channel. If this breakdown resonated with you, hit that subscribe button because we're just getting started. And on that note, we draw the curtains on today's video. If you enjoyed it, then hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.